something about this business is meeting Indigenous groups where they're at. So the opportunity we have is very, very compelling. So when we go 5 years from now, that $350 million that was paid out could be $500 million, $600 million. But precious metals in safe jurisdictions have proven to get the highest premium to NAV.
All right, guys, I'm really excited to be sitting down with Kody. He's the VP of Corporate Development at Nations Royalty, and before that, he was the Vice Chair of the Tahltan Development Corporation. And Kody's got a really interesting background because he comes from a family of miners, and he's now part of Nations Royalty that's pioneering a new type of royalty company that's bringing real wealth and opportunity back to the Indigenous communities. And Kody has an Indigenous background, and he's seen firsthand how helpful it is to have a mine on land in your community and help build that area. So Kody, pleasure to have you. Really excited to be diving into this conversation. Nations is doing some really cool things, and your background speaks for itself. It's almost like the perfect combination of corp dev experience, investor relations experience, Indigenous community experience, and it's like you were meant for this role.
There's never been a company like this before, so when you're thinking about what corporate development would be for an Indigenous owned and managed royalty company, yeah, like I have a very interesting background. I've touched on many different aspects of Indigenous business, governance, mining, capital markets, investor relations, and you kind of need all those aspects to grow this company. So yeah, interesting background, and picking somebody that has experience in all those is an interesting one. I think I fit the bill for that.
Definitely. And it's funny because you were telling me, when we were chatting before, your dad was a miner, and so you guys actually in the beginning you lived at the mine site.
Yeah, so my dad was a underground gold miner at the Kenville Gold Mine outside of Nelson, British Columbia, where I was born. And for the first 2 years of my life, I actually lived in the mine house that was on the mine site.
Wow.
So Dad would walk up the hill, little 5-minute walk up the hill, go into the underground, blast rock, muck, do all the things that you got to do, and come back home at night. A little 5-minute walk back to the house. So like, mining's in my blood. Been a miner been in mining industry my whole life.
Yeah.
Kind of through them. Including my brother. When he was young, we're not very super original, so my dad would always dress him up as a little miner, right, in Halloween, so he'd always be wearing like a full belt and hard hat and everything. So I've been a part of the mining industry my whole life, and we started in Nelson, and that job ended, so we moved to Yellowknife, where my dad actually worked in the Con mine.
Oh, okay.
For a few years, so I lived in Northwest Territories, then lived in Alberta for a little while. Ended up living in Salmon Arm, where he worked in central BC, southern BC, and all over the province, in little high-grade gold mines, and a couple open pits where he was mine manager, worked in Africa, and it's been in my blood since as long as I can remember.
That's fantastic. No, and that's interesting because when you were going through your history, and I'll get you to run through it a little bit, but you also were working as doing investor relations at Skeena.
Yep.
And so you've got basically boots on the ground experience since you were born, and then you've had the capital markets experience afterwards. And I loved the story that you told about how you decided that mining was where you wanted to be, and specifically in the business side, because I think that the mission of Nations Royalty is very close to your heart.
Yeah.
And so how did that come about? What made you switch from being on the boots on the ground to working into communities and doing the actual investor relations?
Yeah, for sure. I'll just run you through a quick history, high level of what I kind of done. Graduated high school, ended up at Simon Fraser, studied geology for a year and a half, didn't end up finishing that degree. I was playing football and everything there too. And worked in different jobs. I worked in the oil field, which is a cold, hard job. On service rigs, northern Alberta. So
Chip Wilson did that job too when he was younger.
There's good. Jim Treliving is a good person I always looked up to. He owns Boston Pizza. He's one of the Dragons on Dragon's Den, and he grew up in a small town, I believe, Manitoba. I read his book, and he all of his friends went to the rigs, and he worked one summer, winter in the rigs, and he's like, no, that's not for me. He became a cop and then became Jim Treliving, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, it's a good place to make money. Actually, something I will say is I was working one job in Toronto. That didn't work out. I was sitting on a little bit of credit card debt. I was a young man, I ended up going to the rigs with no experience at all, getting this job, and going from no job, living in downtown Toronto with a little bit of debt, to being able to make great money
Yeah.
in the oil fields of Alberta and pay off all my debt and save money for school is a pretty special opportunity that other people should, we
It
have
really
that in
is,
Canada. If
yeah.
you want to go work hard and actually go get it and go do this work, you can go make great money right away. It's a pretty cool opportunity. A lot of places on this earth, they don't have those opportunities within the area. So I will say it was a fantastic experience to get out there, make some money, and kind of, work towards my future. So worked there. I was a diamond wholesaler in Toronto for a while, and then I ended up landing a job at Bruce Jack Mine. So I was an underground miner. So I ran haul trucks, ran jack legs, did services, all these other things, and really got to understand what drives people and why they do this work, right? And then I got kind of poached from the Tahltan Central Government. So I'm a Tahltan First Nation member, which is in Northwest British Columbia. Bruce Jack's in Tahltan territory. And worked as the employment director, implementing parts of impact benefit agreements in the employment sections, primarily in education. And then I was networking with all these different folks with all the mining companies in the area, because Tahltan territory encompasses 70% of the Golden Triangle. And met CFOs and CEOs, and I wanted to get involved in the market side of the business. So went back to school, studied business at Sauder at University of British Columbia, and then worked in investor relations with Skeena, as mentioned. Worked at Agentis Capital with Michael Gray, and equity research, and then ended up landing a job at Teck Resources, where I was the lead business planning in the copper growth group. So essentially what they did is they managed capital amongst their 9 development assets to make sure that Teck was allocating their capital accordingly by analyzing risks and annual budgets and 5-year plans on these 9 development stage assets.
Wow.
And it was about a $500 million budget, and kind of helping operate the governance models around that. So that was a really good experience. And for 3.5 years during that period, I was vice chair of the board for Tahltan Nation Development Corporation, as you mentioned, and which provided me a lot of Indigenous business experience. And then I ended up getting poached for Nations Royalty. and to your question, I just really like the mining space because it just adds so much value on the ground. It adds value on the ground, but it's just tangible value where you have employment. Companies provide education dollars. They help with infrastructure spends. Everything outside of just the mine itself, the supply chain, the value chain, let's say, is just so impactful to the local governments, the local Indigenous governments, municipalities, British Columbia, and Canada as a whole. So yeah. I just really like the value that it drives. It's a very tangible business to me. And it put food on my plate when I was growing up, right? Dad was a miner, and it paid well, and we had a great upbringing, and I like to see that it does this for other folks as well in very remote communities, right? Tahltan territory, Dease Lake, Iska, and Telegraph Creek is about a 7-hour drive from the nearest major town. And without mining up in the territory, it helped drive, paved roads and hydro projects, and they have fiber optics going up to the towns now.
Wow.
Villages, I should say. And it's really helped develop the area there, and I see that across the country, because you can't move geology.
No.
So I really like the impact that it has, but I remember Dad being at a couple mines, and we'd be in an area, and everything would be going fine, he'd getting paid, and then the mine would just stop. Something would happen, and I was young, and I didn't realize what was happening. I was like, why are we moving again? And it really sparked an interest in me to be like, okay, what's driving this? What are the forces driving assets? How are they being capitalized, right? How are they being progressed in a sustainable way that allows them to operate? So then I wanted to get into the business side, right? I'm like, okay, what drives these things? And I wanted to actually bring the capital in to bring that value to these communities in these areas. So every step I've taken for the past 7-8 years has been towards that goal. And I ended up working in the Fiore group and with Nations Royalty, where we help empower Indigenous groups to get better equity stakes in these projects and help develop sustainable resources. So the history is kind of bounced all around the place, but it's all been driven by essential kind of vision and value set that I really believe mining can drive a lot of value if it's done sustainably and responsibly. And I wanted to be part of this industry, and on the capital market side.
It's kind of like there's a talk that Steve Jobs gave at Harvard where he said you can't connect the dots looking forwards, you can only connect the dots looking backwards.
Totally.
And I think that hits so well with you, where it's like you really can't, like as you're doing all these random, seemingly disconnected things, and then it all kind of leads together at the end with Nations and with Rob kind of finding you. So what is really interesting though is that you mentioned that there's a lot of wealth that comes in from when these mines are built on the ground for the people, for the communities. What are some of the things that you think are gaps? Like I think when I was talking to Rob, he was saying that you guys are not just looking at getting these benefit agreements into Nations royalty, but you guys are also looking at how can we help them get the proper agreements? How can we make sure that they make the most out of these assets that they have on their properties?
Yeah, so you got two different things. Let's look at the two different perspectives. You got the mining company.
Yeah.
What's the mining company there to do? It's there to make profit.
Yeah.
If you're an equity holder, your value sits in how much profit is this mine going to make. So they go out to the world and are like, we're going to make so much profit on this mine. We're going to be printing money. It's going to be insane. Please invest in this company. That's their messaging. Then you go to the local Indigenous group, and the messaging, sometimes it's getting better, is we're not going to make any money. We can't give you a top line net smelter return. We can't give you this. So it's a negotiation. It's a battle, right? And what we help to do is we understand the mining side. We know, the tricks that they might play to make their royalty owners get less or make it look like they make less to pay them less. And we know how they operate.
Yeah.
We're miners. That's what this office does. And we wanted to bring that knowledge to the Indigenous groups so they can get a fair share of the pie, right? When you go to your investors and say, we're going to make all this money, then you go to the Indigenous group and say, oh, we're not, like it's so tight, margins are thin, we're not going to, right? Gold's at an all-time high, like there's these different things. The Indigenous groups historically have not gained in the upside of these assets. They're not included from the ground on the equity. And when a lot of these historic impact benefit agreements have been struck, there's been really poor royalty structures put into them. Fixed dollar payments that are now, we're 20 years into a mining operation, and they're the same as they were in 2005.
Wow.
You're getting that $500,000 a year, and maybe it's indexed to CPI, and it's a 2% increase per year, but gold is ripping at 2,900 US, and they're not seeing any of that upside.
No.
So what we're here to do is we're like, okay, how can we, when mining companies and Indigenous groups say they want to be partners, being a true partner is you benefit from the upside, and you also don't benefit on the downside.
You
right?
accept the risk of the downside as well as the potential for the upside.
Yeah, exactly. And then and so we're going around helping groups and educating Indigenous groups on what's possible for them, what you guys can get if you negotiate accordingly and look at these different structures. We do help groups kind of push towards net smelter return, royalties in their benefit agreements. And on a, not a side note, but on a different note, and Rob McLeod's our CEO, he's done a fantastic job getting Nations royalty off the ground, but the Selkirk First Nation up in the Yukon actually bought the Minto mine out of receivership.
Oh, interesting.
And we've been supporting them as a Fiore group to help move that forward.
Yeah.
So Nations Royalty is the first majority Indigenous owned public company to trade on the market, and we certainly hope it's not the last. We hope we can build capacity amongst Indigenous people across Canada to get access to the public markets like they never have before, because they've historically been not included in them, and show them the power of the markets to gain access to risk capital so they can build the projects on their territories. And that's kind of going back to my vision years ago of I wanted to buy and help build mining assets.
Yeah.
And as an Indigenous person working in the Indigenous business and capital market space, I think we can pioneer this space and create a lot of value for shareholders that want to be a part of the journey and for the local Indigenous groups.
It's interesting because you guys are almost, you're branded as a royalty company, but you're helping a lot of these people a lot of these communities at the ground floor as well.
Yeah.
And that really kind of speaks to going above and beyond and being mission driven, right? Rather than mercenary. There's I forget who it was, but he talks about the difference between company founders and company operators who are mercenaries versus missionaries. And the mercenaries are just there to go in, make money, and get out. Missionaries are there for the long haul. They want to build something that lasts and that leaves a legacy.
Yep.
And the funny thing is the missionaries tend to have better returns than the mercenaries.
It's all values driven. Like we're majority Indigenous owned, majority Indigenous managed, and I feel like our values align with a lot of different Indigenous groups on where they want to get to, and we can help on that path.
I know you've been spending a lot of time traveling in the past year to these groups.
Oh my God,
like a lot.
Yeah, lots of travel. Before I started the job, I was chatting with one of my mentors, and he's like, "Are you sure you want to do this job? Because there's going to be a lot of travel to remote locations, right? And into different areas." And I believed in the company so much and the model that I wanted to be a part of it. Man, it's been a lot of travel. Like I was in Thunder Bay, Ottawa, like Toronto, Northern BC, and the Yukon, like all over the place all the time. And something about this business is meeting Indigenous groups where they're at.
Yeah.
Right, and that means both in their community and where they're at in their governance maturity or other aspects. And that's something that I personally try to put a lot of time into, of being like, okay, where is this group at? How can we help them get, to the next level, if you'd like to label it as that? But lots of travel.
And how have you been received? Like, how has been the reception about, like, hey, we're Nations Royalty, this is what we're trying to do?
Yeah.
Have people been excited? Have they pulled away?
It's been really good, actually. The biggest part is it takes time to build trust, relationships, and for folks to understand the model. They have a million things to worry about. You're a chief and council, you're worried about land claims, your community's worried about a elders center, traditional holistic healing centers, like all these, you have all these priorities, and then Kody rolls up and is like, hey, I have a mining royalty model and I can increase the PNAV and do all these, and so they're like what is this thing, right? So the opportunity we have to create a tremendous amount of Indigenous wealth is very, very compelling. Just not to go off the question, but in 2023 alone, there was $351 million Canadian paid to Indigenous groups through impact benefit agreement payments, so royalties essentially. If you include oil and gas, that's over $700 million. So picture the present value of all of the future payments that those Indigenous groups would see. And just to show the growth, in 2017 to 2023, there was a 129% increase in these payments. 129% increase. 129% increase because you're starting to see much, much better IBAs, impact benefit agreement royalty structures getting implemented now. The agreements that were done in 2010 or 2015, they're starting to pay out now. So you're seeing these payments rise. So when we go 5 years from now, that $350 million that was paid out could be $500 million, $600 million. So now when I think of like a big vision, like big picture, I'm like, okay, if we were to look at the present value of all those future payments, it'd be in the billions of dollars. And if you're able to unlock extra value by putting it into a royalty company, such as wheat and precious metals trades at a 2x PNAV, so price over net asset value. If we were able to pool that money, put it into a public vehicle like Nations Royalty, receive those premium valuations, you can make Indigenous people very, very wealthy.
You're looking at one of the biggest companies on the TSX at that point.
You could be one of the biggest companies at TSX. You can make Indigenous people that exchanged their royalty payments for equity in our company very, very wealthy, and shareholders that are part of that journey as well. So I look at it as a really cool company because it's a win-win. Right? If we can get those increased valuations, our Indigenous partners that were there from the beginning and throughout will get a nice lift. And any shareholders that saw the vision for the company will get it along the way. There's no other company on the market where you can invest alongside Indigenous people for growth. It's the only one. If you want to invest in Indigenous people, you'd have to go invest in a company that says they're investing in Indigenous people. And I don't know if they are. There's probably some great companies out there. I know mining companies are doing better now.
But you guys are equity partners. It's majority owned.
We have a fairly low liquidity right now. If somebody wanted to go throw a few $100,000 into our stock, it would probably lift. Nishka owns 77% of our equity. So if you threw that money into the stock and it went up 10%, Nishka's investment just went up 10%. Like you are literally investing alongside. And when we bring more partners on, there's going to be more Indigenous groups. And we trade at a lower PNAV valuation right now, but we think we have a path to being, a top royalty company, a tangible path, I'll say. and the Indigenous groups that are along that journey, along with our shareholders that both want to be a part of it, it's a win-win to me. It's a really interesting model.
Could there be an opportunity that you guys are even traded at a premium? Like I know that some, like for example, Tesla is like green energy and very good ESG, and so it's traded at a ridiculous premium compared to other car companies.
I say this all the time. It's untested because there's no majority Indigenous owned public company. I would say yes.
Yeah.
There's pressure on our stock right now because people are wondering, what's next? What are you guys going to do next? Who's going to partner? Do First Nations, Indigenous people get along? Will they partner on this thing? We believe they do, and they will, and we're having these conversations in the background, obviously. It's my job. And I think we could get a premium to NAV on that. Like, I don't understand why if we created a top-tier royalty portfolio, majority Indigenous owned, in safe jurisdiction like Canada, why we wouldn't get a premium to NAV compared to other royalty companies. You're looking at ESG's going a little bit out of vogue and this and that, but even sustainable investors from around the globe start to see this equity take off because we have a great business model and we have access to royalties that no other little royalty company has access to. So we can grow. When I say we could tangibly grow a top tier royalty portfolio, like we have a path to do that, and if we can execute, I think we'll get a premium to NAV that's going to be higher than the other royalty companies in the similar market cap range. Personal opinion, it's untested, but I don't see why that wouldn't happen.
What's really interesting to me is also like you quickly mentioned it there, but the royalties, like I was listening to a talk the other day and they were saying it got to the point, royalty models became so popular that it got to the point that there were no more royalties left for new companies to be formed. But nobody had ever tapped into impact benefit agreements.
Yep.
And so you had this whole pool of like literally billions of dollars that is just sitting there that's untapped by the public markets.
Well, that's exactly it. Like I think we were the 27th royalty company on the scene when we went public last June.
Wow.
If I remember right. And to your point, it's been such a successful model that everybody wanted to get into it. It's so much easier than mining. You know what I mean? You don't like to run an exploration company and bring it through development stage into production. Like that's a heavy lift, and I commend all mining companies that do it. Once again, I love the industry and I'm a big proponent. But if you could run a successful royalty company, you just collect checks.
Yeah.
You just collect checks from the different mines. They take the risk. And if you have a portfolio of top-line net smelter returns coming into your company, like a Wheaton and a Franco have accomplished and what we look to accomplish, then it's really the best model. So everybody saw these companies. Wheaton Precious Metal is up 6,500% from 2004. And the actual yield's much higher because you've been getting dividends for years. So when you look at these companies, they've been so successful that it's gotten so competitive, to your point. And the small royalty companies aren't able to obtain royalties in safe jurisdictions on top producing gold and precious metal assets. So what they've done is they've started to look at earlier stage royalties, so they get into exploration stage royalties. They start going to more unsafe jurisdictions. So they go out of Canada or the US or Australia. They go into particular niche markets like lithium, right? Or into base metals. And then they try to test the market to see what their premium to NAV will be. But precious metals in safe jurisdictions have proven to get the highest premium to NAV. Right? You look at the PNAV chart, the classic one most royalty investors will look at, and you got your Royal Gold, Wheaton, Franco up at the top, right? Sandstorms, Osiskos, they all have the premium valuations. But it's virtually impossible to get there with what's out there. They're all, to your point, all the royalties are gone, so the smaller companies are doing those tactics that I had mentioned. Nations Royalty has access to royalties on top producing gold mines in safe jurisdictions. When we started the company, Derek Patton, our chief investment officer, prints off a list of the top 10 producing gold mines in Canada, and we start discussions with the local Indigenous groups that have royalties on them.
Wow.
So we have a tangible path to building a company that we have the potential to get those top line royalties on top producing assets in safe jurisdictions that no other little royalty company even has a chance of talking with, simply because we're majority Indigenous owned and we're majority Indigenous managed.
Yeah.
And to your point, no one's ever tapped into this opportunity set. We're first movers. it's taking time to build those relationships and that trust. But we think once we've built the pipeline and have built relationships with these groups, which I'm working my butt off to do, and we think that we once we start partnering with some of these groups, we can be on a tangible path to being a top royalty company.
That's what I really see as the catalyst, is as a few of these kind of deals come through, you essentially, the hypothesis that is being proved out is, will Indigenous communities do the deal with Nations Royalty? Yeah. That's the question. That's the hypothesis that you guys say yes to, and all your shareholders like Frank Justra and other people are saying yes to. So I think that once that's proved out, that's when you're going to start to see the premium, right? That's when you're going to start to see that jump and that momentum. But it's like in the beginning when you have like a square rock and you start rolling it down a mountain.
Yeah.
And then in the beginning it's like, but then it kind of smooths out, and then you get going over time and you kind of hit that faster growth curve as you have more momentum.
That's exactly it. I joined last June and we went public. I joined June 10th, we went public June 21st. Mm-hmm. And we had a couple discussions with Indigenous groups that were getting progressed a little bit, but basically when I started, a big part of my job was building these relationships and starting the process. So we've built the pipeline. It's been 8 months, I think, since June. My math is right. Mm-hmm. And I've helped with the team obviously build a pipeline of relationships that, to your point, once we get one, I think we're going to get 2 and 3 and 4. It's taking time to get the first ones. It's a brand new concept. You know, they're looking at the future of their community, right? Yeah. Because it's like, oh my God, you guys are going to be taking the payments now and in the future. We're like, yes, that is the partnership, but you're also getting ownership in our company.
So you're getting the equity now.
You're getting the equity now for those future payments, and as an equity holder, you get access to the royalties that we already have in our portfolio. So instead of owning 100% of one royalty on your territory, if they have one in their territory, some groups have multiple, then you can be part owner of many. Mm-hmm. So we have royalties currently on the underground Brucejack mine owned by Newmont, Ascot's Premier and Red Mountain mines, Kitsault, which is owned by Resource Capital Funds, New Mali, which is a molybdenum project. And then we have a royalty on KSM, owned by Seabridge Gold, which is the world's largest permitted but undeveloped copper gold asset. It's got a 72-year mine life. Yeah, and it's going to produce 1.4 million gold equivalent ounces for 5 or 6 years at the beginning, and then it changes a little bit. But to put that into scale, a Detour Lake is Canada's largest gold mine, and it produces about 700,000 ounces of gold. So KSM will be producing about double. So what I tell Indigenous groups, I'm like, you guys have done all the hard work of getting the impact benefit agreement. Yeah. That was the hard part. That took 200 years of colonization and legal landscape changes and leadership and like all these things. Like, you got it. You have the IBA. That was the hard part. Now we need to take the financials out of it, leverage them, pool them together, allow outside investors to invest in them, get those premiums to NAV, and allow them to make a tremendous amount of wealth so we can start managing wealth instead of poverty.
So what's next for you as you're looking over the next, few years? Like,
for me,
what do you see?
Yeah, I think we can. A lot of the groups that we're partnering with have very significant royalty assets. So pooling those together, getting that momentum, like you said, building the pipeline, so then it's a bit of a machine. During that process where we're acquiring the IBAs that are already negotiated, we're actually helping, and I know I mentioned earlier in our talk, we're helping groups negotiate IBAs. So that those take time, and then it takes time for those mines to produce. So if we're able to get into that process, help them get the best possible royalty payment they can, we can start looking at partnering with those assets over time. So building that pipeline, and when I say a tangible path to being a top royalty company, I think we have one, because we can utilize what we have now, bring that into the company, in exchange for equity, get a valuation that's competitive with the other large royalty companies, and during that process, we're helping groups negotiate and building trust and relationships and helping them get better IBA payments during that process. And then I think we'll have another stage of growth after our initial one. So, I mean, I like to think, like, when I say tangible path, I like to think how we could actually get there. And I think between a couple of the strategies as mentioned there, looking a few years down the road, I hope we have some nice royalties on some new assets. We're helping other groups negotiate better assets, so we're lifting the whole royalty sector, Indigenous royalty sector in general, and we're bettering a bunch of Indigenous folks' lives.
That's fantastic. I think it's going to be exciting to look back and see how people talk about Kody in 5 to 10 years.
It'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see. I really like the Selkirk model as well. I think Indigenous people should own their own mines. Being a Teltan member, we have lots of different operations. There's Red Chris and Bruce Jack are operating right now, but lots of projects up in the Golden Triangle. And it'd be really cool to have a small part in building like a Teltan mine, or building any other Indigenous group mine on their territory. If we can help provide the capital and the expertise to do that. When we look 5-10 years down the road, Nations Royalty will be humming along. We'll have a pipeline of potential partners and building more, and then in little offshoots we could help groups build their own mining assets, which I think is really, really cool.
That's interesting. It's very interesting. Well, I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to see you guys build it, and I love stories where people doubt it and it turns out amazing. So everybody loves an underdog story. So I'm 100%. definitely going to be keeping a close eye on you guys, and hopefully we chat again in within 6 months.
It's done. We'll do.
Appreciate it, Kody. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, buddy.